All right, welcome to a new episode of Cali Claptrap. Today I have Alyssa Tolva. Alyssa, thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So Alyssa is the branch manager of Cupcake Girls for Oregon and Southwest Washington. Alyssa, would you mind sharing a little bit about what led you to this position?
Yeah. So I was exiting a corporate career of about 17 years, and I knew that I wanted to do something within the nonprofit world. I have always volunteered my entire life, but I just felt that I needed to be somewhere different than a corporate draining lifestyle. And so when I was looking for the different nonprofits within Portland, there's a plethora. It's oversaturated here. And what I did start to settle on is that I wanted to find something within the trafficking world, because there is a lot of sex trafficking here in Portland, and I don't think it's talked about nearly enough. And so when I was doing research, I was finding a lot of organizations that dealt with more of international trafficking. I found organizations that dealt with youth trafficking. I also found organizations that were more concentrated on just solely getting the folks out of trafficking, but not really with the full support and aftercare of it. And there's a lot of it. And so when I did find the Cupcake Girls, I was really intrigued, because not only are they doing domestic sex trafficking, which is right here in our backyard, they're also constantly that the clients have assistance no matter how much assistance they need or how long they need the assistance. I mean, we can have clients for, years. I also really liked the mission that it dealt with folks who were currently being trafficked, but also people who are just survivors. And so it could be, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago that they were trafficked, but it's still offering that support. And that really did, for me, I think, put a period on, they really do show the aftercare side of it. But then the other part is that they supported sex workers. And that's something that I just hadn't seen at all when I was looking at different nonprofits. The folks that did even address sex work really addressed it in the sense that if you are a sex worker, you're being trafficked, which is totally wrong. And then it's, we're going to get you out of this situation because what you're doing is wrong. And I just didn't agree with that. I'm like, there's no reason that I'm going to come in and tell anybody what they're doing is, right or wrong. And I'm also going to not want to make sure that I'm telling people, what they need to do, because they're literally coming for help. And I don't think that telling somebody how you can help them is the right way. So finding Cupcake Girls, the sex trafficking, domestic, supporting sex workers, I was all in. And so I was like, please get me on staff. Awesome. And it worked out that I was able to get on staff.
Nice. So it checked all those boxes. Would you mind telling our listeners a little bit about how Cupcake Girls started?
Yeah. Back in 2011, it started in Vegas. And so our founder was in Vegas, really working on going into the clubs and brothels there and doing hair and makeup, bringing cupcakes, and, just something for a treat, a sweet. Everybody gets a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more talkative when they're eating something. And our name was born out of that, because people would say, oh my gosh, the Cupcake Girls are here. And it was just like, oh, here we go. That's our name. And, while it's not very inclusive, we do serve all gender identities. So it's not just women. And then 6 months later, we had a client that was moving to Portland, and they, said, hey, Portland really has a higher need right now for what you're doing. Can you please come to Portland and, start a branch? And so 6 months later, we started a branch here. That client is now one of our amazing partners, offering their services to our clients for discounted costs. And the reason why we really needed it here in Portland is because, the trafficking is high, but the sex work is also really high. Portland has the second most strip clubs per capita than any city in the United States. Springfield, Oregon, right down by you, has the highest out of all the states. Yeah.
I would not that.
A lot of people don't know that. Yeah. So it really was needed to have an organization that was here to support the sex worker side of it. and, really make sure that they're being taken care of as well.
Yeah. And also a lot of this, I think, will be educational, not only for me, but for my listeners. So I might ask them very basic questions, but can you explain a little bit about, I guess my question is, separate the difference between trafficking and a sex worker. And then also, why do you think Portland has such a high number of trafficking cases?
Yeah. Well, coercion is going to be the key word. So if you are an active sex worker or even just a retired sex worker, and you went into the work because you wanted to, you chose it, you actively sought it out, but you also got to make decisions on how you did it, what you did with your body, you had control of your money. That is you being a sex worker, and you're empowered in it, or maybe you're doing it out of survival to pay bills. I'm pretty sure there's lots of people who can say they don't love their job, but it's paying the bill. So
Yeah.
you have a whole plethora of people who are in this doing it because it's the work that they're choosing. Sex trafficking, you don't have that choice. You're being coerced into it, you're being forced into it, and you don't have control of your finances, you don't have control of your body or your autonomy. And I think that that's where it gets really mucky, because oftentimes people just say, if you're a sex worker, you're being trafficked, because why would somebody want to go into sex work? And that's just where we really work to educate the community on that, because, well, why did you go into the job that you're doing? Why are you doing what you did? Did you choose it? And I think that's the biggest thing, is just saying, like, hey, there are people here who want to do this work and who love this work, and they're not being trafficked. And you got to get that whole scenario out of your head that all sex workers are being trafficked, because it's just not the case. And it's also harmful, because people don't always identify themselves as being trafficked, because they don't fully understand, because of how media portrays it or how Hollywood portrays it.
Yeah. And so do you find like the people that end up getting coerced, and why Portland maybe is the hotspot for that? Is that because maybe it's a popular area for like a lot of runaways, or what do you find maybe can be a similar reason why Portland seems to be a major attractor to that?
Yeah. The I-5 corridor is huge. So that does bring a lot of trafficking. Also, we do have a lot of, strip clubs and sex work here, and that can bring trafficking, but it's not going to guarantee it. And we do, like you said, the houseless population, we do have a lot of runaways and also houselessness, and the trafficking percentage within the houseless community is really high. And that happens quite often. So it's just a lot of different reasons as to why it's here. I think it's also talked a lot more. I think that's one thing too, because the trafficking numbers, when you're looking at percentages, that's just who's been caught or what's been reported, but how many cases aren't reported. The hard part too, though, is also looking at how the police department is recording that. Oftentimes what they'll do is they'll say that if they arrest a sex worker, they now mark it as a trafficking survivor. And so that's also wrong, if that person is in sex work.
Yeah. Is there a big PR effort on Cupcake's part with like the police department about the different terms? And is there a good relationship with the city that you found?
We're working really hard on that. Yeah. And so we have had multiple meetings with the Portland Police Department, as well as other city officials, just really working on the education side of it. And, we want them to know that if you do have someone that you think is being trafficked, or that you do arrest that is a sex worker, send them to us. We're a resource that we can assist with. And I think that is also part of a problem, is that oftentimes they just don't know what to do with the person they arrest, and they don't know how to handle it. Or, we've had quotes by people saying, we just don't want to do the work because that's a lot of detective work and we're not detectives. And that, it's sad. It's a sad fact. But I think the more that we are, speaking with the folks that are dealing with the arrests and are dealing with, the reports or the complaints, that they know who they can send to, I think it helps with the potential, reduction of arrests.
Yeah. What services do you provide for clients that find you? And do you ever like say, you know what, we've hit our max, there's, we don't have any room right now, come back in a month or something like that?
Yeah. We do have a wait list. We do have a wait list. The reason for that is because, you know, we can only have so many clients per each advocate, and an advocate is somebody who's working directly with the clients one-on-one to set goals and to connect them to the resources that we have. So we do occasionally go on a wait list. Right now we are on a wait list, but we have 3 new advocates coming out of training soon here at our branch, and hopefully, you know, we can uplift that and start accepting more folks. The resources that we do are really anything. So the first thing we do when we meet clients are we asking them, you know, what can we do for you? What do you need? How can we help you? How can we get, you know, those goals made? And so the partners and the resources that we have are based off of that. So it could be free legal, it could be medical, dental, mental health. It could be a yoga studio or getting their nails done at a salon for self-care. I mean, really, it's a plethora of resources, and it's really endless.
Nice.
Yeah.
How many advocates do you know, are you aware of, that are at the Portland branch right now?
At the Portland branch, I believe we have 7, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So something that kind of caught my eye with sort of this idea of interviewing you was the decriminalization process that's happening in Oregon. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can. So the decriminalization process in Portland is really more of an outreach and education part right now, really just getting the community to understand what decrim is and why people are in support of it. For us, we're in support of decriminalization of sex work because we want to make sure that our clients are set up for success. So when you have decriminalization of sex work, they're no longer being arrested for the work that they're doing. So they no longer now have records or felonies, which then in turn causes them not to be able to get loans or, you know, a place of living or even work. And so that it really does hurt them when they have those records. And so being able to just eliminate that right there completely takes that out. The other side of it is safety. You know, New Zealand has decriminalized sex work for 18 years now, and their numbers show. You know, they've definitely proven that there's a reduction in abuse and harm towards sex workers because they can report it. Currently in Portland and everywhere else that sex work is illegal, you can't report abuse or, you know, rape or anything else to the police because they're going to arrest you. And then you're now being re-traumatized for the thing that you're trying to ask for support on. And so when you decriminalize it, they are able to go and get that support and go get that protection from, you know, police officers. And then they also can all trust police officers. The thing for here in the States is that sex workers are abused and raped by police officers because the police, what are you going to do? You can't report what you do. Yeah. So all of that right there. It also takes the stigma away in the community. And so it also helps support them in a sense that people aren't constantly judging the work that they do or who they are. They're not being turned away for services because of who they are, what they do. And that happens in the States all the time, even medical help or getting loans at a bank. And then there's also, you know, condom carry laws. So Oregon doesn't have it, but there are a lot of states that do have a condom carry law, where if you're carrying a condom and you're arrested for just thinking that you're doing sex work, you now automatically will have a felony because the condom is proof. So that in turn has been proven that when that's taken away, HIV rates go down because they're carrying condoms because they can and they feel safe doing that.
Yeah. And a couple of things I found just to support what you were saying. I think in Baltimore, 250 sex workers were interviewed and 78% reported an abusive encounter with the police person. Also, New Zealand seems to be the gold standard when I look as far as decriminalization. And they compare that with sort of the Nordic or Swedish model, or it's also called entrapment or sort of the entrapment model, about sort of that's sort of more of the criminalize the client. So rather than maybe the sex worker sort of getting the charge, and they said that violence increases with that, with that sort of model. So just for the listeners to know, that New Zealand model, I didn't know it was going on for 18 years, seems to be the gold standard. And also what you reported, what STI's gone down, human trafficking has also gone down.
Yep. Human trafficking has gone down. I think the other thing to note with legalization, which is not what we're for, that's the Nordic, is that, you know, when you're criminalizing the client, when you're criminalizing the people who are paying for the work, then how is that any different? Because now they don't have any clients or customers because that person doesn't want to get arrested. So it doesn't help them in the long run. It also takes away their autonomy of being able to do the work, because they're now having to pay fees, or they have to, you know, fill out forms saying this is who I am. Yeah, decrim is just, it's honestly the safest way for our clients to be able to just be who they are and earn the money that they want to earn.
Nice. And how well is that being embraced by Oregon lawmakers at this time?
They're listening.
They're listening.
Yeah, they're listening. That's about as far as we're going right now. There's a lot of other groups like the Sex Worker Relief Fund. Their group is working on this too, but I think the biggest thing, you know, that we can say for us is that we're just talking about it because it's going to support our clients. And we did do an event recently for decrim of work, and we had Joanne Hardesty with us, and we had a couple other commissioners. And I think it's just really important that they keep asking the questions and they keep wanting to hear it, because, you know, it is coming. It is coming. Yeah.
And is the goal to get it onto the ballot where voters can vote for that? Or is this something that has to take place within kind of both houses?
You know, I don't actually know that, because we're not in the political side of that. We're simply just really working towards the education and the speaking out and advocating for it. But we're not a part of that. So I don't know. I don't know. I do know that to get it onto the floor, you have to have like 250 signatures or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Also, a little bit, I think, connected with this, you talked a little bit about SESTA and FOSTA. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correct. Can you explain a little bit about those two things?
Yeah, SESTA and FOSTA. So yeah, it's called the Protection Act, and I'm doing air quotes because it definitely did not protect the sex workers. It was advertised and still is talked about as we're going to take away these options on online platforms for sex workers to sell their work. And that in turn is going to protect the sex workers, because that's going to reduce trafficking. And that's not true. What it ended up doing is taking away safe platforms from consensual sex workers, and they no longer had a safe place to be able to advertise, market, use it for their goods and services. And so, you know, places like Instagram, Twitter, Craigslist, you know, all of those took away the option to be able to even just, you know, hashtag sex worker, or to be able to show any type of nudity, even if it was a safe space and 18, you know, only over. It just, the idea of it was false. And it's still talked about in a false matter of it's protecting them, and it's not. It's an attack on sex workers, because it's no longer giving them that safe space. Instead of, you know, being able to advertise online, vet your clientele, do your work, get your money, and get paid on a safe platform, many of them are now having to, you know, find other means to do that. Oftentimes that can mean street-based work, and that can be really dangerous, because they can't always vet their clients, and they can't always get, you know, safe money. Yeah.
I also read something, there was like a 60% chance of risk your clients once that happened. Is that connected? I also saw something in the news recently with the OnlyFans. Is that something connected with that, or is that something different?
It is connected to it, but I believe the reasoning OnlyFans said is that it was based off of their financial agreement with a bank. And yeah, and I know that they have gone back and said, oh no, sex work is still going to be allowed. We're not taking that away. But it's definitely based off of that. Yeah. And I think there's more platforms, unfortunately, that are going to start following suit. And it's just, it is harder. It's taking away funds, it's taking away safety, and it's taking away their voice.
I also heard recently there's, I think, something in Congress that's being there's a committee that's looking into this project and about whether or not, what is the proper way to go about that. And I don't know how long that would take, but I think it's been going on for a couple of years and stuff. Yeah. What can the public do?
Yeah, you can do lots. I think education is huge. Keep asking your questions. When you hear something about decriminalization and you're not fully sure what that means, look it up, find out why it's important. Ask sex workers, don't make assumptions. I think that that's really huge. There's so many blogs and news articles written by peeps that aren't in sex work, and so I think being able to talk to the folks that are directly being affected, I think is huge. If you see something, say something. You can always bring up our organization to somebody that you think is a sex worker or is being trafficked, but just please be mindful to do that safely and quietly, because that could be in an unsafe situation for the person you're talking to. Donating and volunteering with our org is really big. We are volunteer based. We have currently 47 volunteers here at our branch, and there's many different things that people can do. We only ask for 5 hours per month. If people want to donate more time, that's amazing, but we only ask for 5. We do not praise burnout at all. But it could be, administrative. It could be going into the community and speaking, just like I am, and helping advocate for our clients. It could be working one-on-one with our clients. So there's many different options there. And then also donations. We are grassroots. We don't take government grants at all. The reason for that is because they would only want to support the trafficking side, and they would not want to support the sex worker side, and we just aren't down for that. Yeah, so we don't take government grants. So private funding and small donations are really the way that we fund items for our clients, and I think that's always very, very helpful. We have a big fundraiser coming up at the end of this month, September 26th through October 23rd, and that's our Change Takes Action fundraiser, and we have all that information on our website. But we have individuals who are raising funds on their own teams, and we have a collective org goal of 400,000 this year, and I think we're going to hit it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I wanted to, first of all, was there any other questions that I didn't ask, or anything important that you think that you should share that I didn't get to?
No, I mean, definitely sex work is work. If you have any type of judgments, maybe just sit with yourself for a minute and ask why. I think do some more research on sex trafficking and what it really looks like, instead of how media and Hollywood portrays it to be.
And maybe just to expand on that a little bit, what is the big differences in your opinion between how Hollywood and the media presents it and compared to how it actually is in your opinion?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is that most people assume trafficking happens internationally and doesn't happen domestically here in the United States. And that's just not true. I mean, there's all types of human trafficking here in the States, but sex trafficking does happen. I think the other thing that it tends to be shown as, chains, vans, kidnapping, physical abuse. That does happen. It does happen here. But the majority of the trafficking cases that we have we call it chains on the brain. So it's a manipulation. So it could be either they're doing it because the person maybe has all of their papers and they don't think that, they could be able to gain their IDs or passports or whatever themselves. They might have children with their trafficker. It might be a loved one. So 58% of our clients identify their trafficker as a female lover. And so it's not just a male issue. I think that's big for people to know. But it could be the barista that gave you coffee. It could be your best friend. It could be me. And I might not feel safe enough to be able to tell folks that I'm being trafficked and I want to ask for help, or I might not even fully understand what trafficking is or that I am being trafficked because of the way that I've seen it in movies or
Yeah.
I've heard it on the news. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's really big for people to understand that it's a very open problem and it's not just hidden away.
And just a question that popped up in my head as you were talking about that. So how, compared to like domestic USA residents and international, what is the different, or what is the percentage do you find between those two parties in Portland?
I don't know that number.
Yeah.
I don't know that number.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much. Your organization sounds wonderful. I was very happy to pleased to find out that was going on, and I learned a lot in this process, and hopefully all of our listeners will as well. Alyssa, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you again.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.